iCatholic Mobile is a 5G wireless provider dedicated to supporting your faith and values, offering unlimited talk and text, reliable data, and plans that support Catholic causes. A portion of every dollar helps sustain the mission of the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. With nationwide coverage, iCatholic Mobile connects you to what matters most. More information is available at iCatholicMobile.com.
iCatholic Mobile underwrites for the Station of the Cross.
Pro-aborts imposing their immorality, the fascinating history of the Catholic faith in colonial America, and much more. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is C.J. Doyle, Executive Director of the Catholic Action League of Massachusetts, founded in 1995. CatholicActionLeague.org is where you can find it. C.J. Doyle, welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
I'm very well. I'm delighted to join you, Jim, and your listeners once again for your fine program.
Yes, thank you. It's a great blessing to have you with us, and so we're excited to dive in. But before we begin, do want to remind everybody about iCatholic Mobile. It's the only Catholic mobile phone company in the U.S. today. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you do help fund the Station of the Cross. You can check out iCatholic Mobile at iCatholicMobile.com. All right, so let's dive in. You've got some great articles up there, great press statements up there at CatholicActionLeague.org. There's a whole grouping of them that I'm kind of categorizing as how Massachusetts elected officials and judges are imposing their immorality beyond their own state, even more so in their own state, but then beyond onto the rest of the nation. And you've got an article from August 4th up there. Massachusetts legislature passes immunity law for abortion industry. It begins by saying that on July 31st, the Massachusetts Senate and the Massachusetts House of Representatives passed to enact the so-called SHIELD bill. Tell us more about this.
About 22 states and the District of Columbia, Jim, have so-called SHIELD laws, which were implemented in blue states by left-wing Democratic legislatures, on behalf of the abortion industry. One of the disingenuous, dishonest tactics that the abortion industry used after the Dobbs decision was to say that we now have to on a state legislative level, protect abortion. Well, abortion was already protected in most blue states, either by statute or by, in the case of Massachusetts, by a Supreme Judicial Court decision from 1981. What they were actually doing is they were expanding abortion. They were expanding their own influence, and they were immunizing themselves from legal consequences. Now, what these SHIELD laws, by the way, Massachusetts first passed a SHIELD law in 2022, so this is an expansion of an existing statute. What it does is it essentially immunizes the abortion industry from all consequences of shipping mifepristone or in other cases puberty blockers to states where their use is prohibited. Abortion activists, abortionists, various doctors, various left-wing groups will enjoy complete legal immunity. They'll have a legislative license to essentially violate the laws of other states. Now, this, of course, is a complete repudiation of the full faith and credit clause of the U.S. Constitution, which says that states should respect each other's laws. It's a rejection of the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution of federal supremacy. It's essentially, again, a legislative license. And what it means is these abortionists will be shielded from first of all, their identities will be concealed. They won't have their actual names revealed. It'll be a practice or an institution rather than individual names. They'll conceal their identities. It will prevent any kind of extradition. They'll be completely immunized from criminal prosecution, from civil liability, from professional discipline, and even from an insurance penalty. So again, it's special interest legislation on behalf of this very, very powerful special interest, the abortion industry. And by the way, it authorizes and in fact requires officials, not only residents, but officials of Massachusetts to reject records requests, to ignore subpoenas. This includes law enforcement personnel, ignore subpoenas. In the case of court clerks, refuse to file civil lawsuits and refuse, in the case of law enforcement, to execute warrants. I mean, it's a complete nullification of of the laws of other states. So this is kind of a neo-Confederate proposal, a neo-Confederate law, and it really is quite extreme. No one can be extradited now to a state. If, for instance, somebody sends these mifepristone, these toxic, lethal abortion pills to another state, say a woman not only kills her unborn child, but is killed or injured herself. In a case of, we know from mifepristone, it not only kills unborn children, but in 1 in 10 cases, it causes serious adverse medical complications for the women who use it. The person responsible for that in Massachusetts would be completely immunized from any legal responsibility. So it's really an assault on the laws of the other states and implicitly on the supremacy of the U.S. government and the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah, it's disgusting action by these leaders in Massachusetts. And so what's the recourse for the federal government in this? I mean, it, I guess, assumes they have any will to do anything about it. Now, if they did have some will to do something about this, what would you propose? Maybe federal enforcement of the Comstock Act to prohibit this from going through. They can't be mailing out these chemical abortion pills or puberty blockers that are going to harm people in other states. I mean, they can make a state law saying that they have some sort of a right to do it, but certainly the federal law ought to be able to come in and say this doesn't work this way. Any thoughts you have on what the federal government can do in this case?
Well, 16 state attorney generals already have thoughts on it, and they're pursuing that. 16 state attorney generals have written to the leaders of Congress asking for federal action on this in the form of federal legislation to preempt shield laws, which means that there would be a federal law, and again, under the U.S. Constitution, that there is federal supremacy, a federal law which would require, law enforcement in other states, in states that refuse to do so, to cooperate with law enforcement and with the court system of other states. Again, we actually have a case where if you file a civil liability lawsuit, say in Louisiana against a Massachusetts abortionist, the court clerk won't file your case in the Superior Court here. So it's as if we've seceded from the Union in a way. So 16 attorney generals, all Republicans from red states, have written again to Congress, and they're asking for federal legislation to preempt and to overrule these shield laws. So we should hope that this is something that you have Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate, narrow ones in the case of the House, and you have a Republican president. So hopefully, if this bill can make it through the House of Representatives to be approved by the Senate, it should be something that I would think the Trump administration might support. So we should look for federal action on this and support the efforts of these attorney generals to prompt Congress to do something.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, it seems the obstacle there would be getting it through the U.S. Senate, because I don't think they can push anything else through via a reconciliation bill where they would just need a simple majority. So there would be the filibuster. They'd have to have 60 votes, which they don't have. So it seems like it would be blocked that way. But anything else that the federal government can do? I mean, I bring up the Comstock Act because I think that's something that there are lawyers within the Justice Department already looking at with respect to, it's the Wild West right now, states, even other countries shipping in these chemical abortion pills all over the place, even into the pro-life states that have rather restrictive laws at this point. But the DOJ could just say, we're going to enforce this Comstock Act. We don't need to have any more legislation. This is on the books. It hasn't been enforced. We're going to enforce it, apply it in this way. Any thoughts on that?
I think that obviously the enforcement of the Comstock law would be both salutary and I think legally practically possible. We should also consider doing perhaps what the International Court of Justice does at The Hague, which is to essentially impose travel bans in the sense that say somebody has been indicted or is being prosecuted or has been sued for some on a civil basis. If they travel through a red state, they ought to be arrested. They ought to be extradited. They ought to be held accountable. So I think that's one possibility. But it's really again a matter of the extremism of the abortion industry here and their total control. In Massachusetts, by the way, which maybe about half of the legislators are Catholic, maybe a majority are Catholic. A clear majority of both state representatives and state senators are listed as either champions or allies. They have this rating system of legislators that are listed as either champions or allies of Planned Parenthood, and they're endorsed by Planned Parenthood. They're funded by Planned Parenthood. They're funded by Reproductive Equity Now and various other pro-abortion groups. So this is a case where Hilary Belloc, the great Catholic historian, said that what passes as democracy is really an oligarchy, a particular kind of oligarchy called plutocracy. It's the rule of money power, and Planned Parenthood funds the tax money that Planned Parenthood gets. They get about $794 million each year in the aggregate. Part of that money goes back in terms of the salaries that are paid to Planned Parenthood officials, goes back in the form of campaign contributions, and also campaign contributions from their various PACs, like the Planned Parenthood Advocacy Fund of Massachusetts, which is located here in the Bay State. So, one hand washes the other. This powerful special interest, the abortion industry, funds legislators, funds the campaigns of legislators, who in turn pass legislation to protect them. Governor Healy just signed the SHIELD Act into law, and basically what she was doing is she's protecting her donor class in the abortion industry.
Yeah, well, CJ Doyle is with us. We're going to get to more with him when we come back from the break. Again, you can find all of the articles, more on CJ and the good work of the Catholic Action League of Massachusetts over at CatholicActionLeague.org, CatholicActionLeague.org. Another interesting aspect to all of this that will be of interest to Catholics will be what's the response here from the Massachusetts Catholic Conference, the Archdiocese of Boston? We're going to get into that. And again, CJ brings up how the money works here, follow the money. He writes more in the article. We're going to get to that when we get back. Stay tuned. If you are buying or selling a home, there's an easy way to help the Station of the Cross at the same time. Real Estate for Life has 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the U.S. and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered, experienced realtor near you. And don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross. All right, let's get back to C.J. Doyle's article. Massachusetts legislature passes immunity law for abortion industry, the so-called SHIELD law that is now in place there in Massachusetts. The Senate and the House voted it through. The governor signed it. And CJ writes this about this very interesting aspect of it. He writes, "It is disgraceful, though perhaps not surprising, that neither the Massachusetts Catholic Conference nor the Archdiocese of Boston spoke out against this malign measure, which, among other provisions, will force religious hospitals and pro-life physicians to perform abortions under the rubric of stabilizing care for emergency medical conditions. The complacency of Catholic Church leaders may be explained by that old maxim, follow the money. In July of 2023, the Healy-Driscoll administration awarded Catholic Charities of Boston an unprecedented grant of $1 million. In March of 2024, the Healy-Driscoll administration allocated an additional $2.6 million to Catholic Charities of Boston and Springfield for migrant resettlement and job training. $3.6 million in public funds, it would seem, can buy quite a lot of silence. So great reporting here. CJ Doyle connecting the dots for us. I want to first ask you, before we get to even the money aspect of this, the aspect of this law that is expanding this murderous abortion regime in Massachusetts, besides what it's trying to push on other states. But you write of it here, you say it's going to force religious hospitals and pro-life physicians to perform abortions under the rubric of stabilizing care for emergency medical conditions. So what is this all about? Help us to understand this. What's new here? And it would certainly seem like, if this is the case, that certainly Catholic leaders would need to speak up on this, but tell us more about it, CJ.
Well, what they're doing is they're piggybacking on a proposal that the Biden administration attempted to impose on the entire country, but ultimately failed. Remember, the Biden administration tried to use the so-called immorality law, which prohibited hospitals from turning away patients that were indigent in emergency rooms. By the way, the immorality law specifically referenced unborn children. And the Biden administration attempted to interpret that to force hospitals all over the country, including religious hospitals and including hospitals in states that restricted or prohibited abortion, to perform so-called quote-unquote emergency abortions under the rubric of quote-unquote stabilizing care. Now, Biden failed to do that. The Trump administration obviously repudiated that when they came into office. But this is an attempt by the Massachusetts legislature and the Massachusetts executive branch to resurrect that, at least for Massachusetts. Now, with the collapse of the Stewart healthcare system, scandalous situation in eastern Massachusetts, the entire former Caritas Christi Catholic Hospital network in eastern Massachusetts and the Archdiocese of Boston and in the Diocese of Fall River has now disappeared. However, there's still one acute care Catholic hospital in Massachusetts. That's in the Diocese of Springfield. That's Mercy Medical Center, run by Trinity Health, the Catholic healthcare provider in the city of Springfield. And under this law, the hospital and the physicians who work in the emergency room would be required under certain circumstances to perform abortions. And if they refuse to do so, both the hospital and the individual physician would receive a $10,000 fine. And clearly this is unconstitutional. If this was ever any attempt to enforce this, you would have a First Amendment free exercise lawsuit. I think given the current composition of the U.S. Supreme Court, I think the plaintiffs would prevail. So this again is a scandal, and remarkably, no one in the Catholic Church has spoken out against this. We have a state lobbying organization consisting of there's four Catholic jurisdictions: the Archdiocese of Boston and the Diocese of Springfield, Fall River, and Worcester. And we have a well-funded Catholic lobbying group, Catholic Conference. They didn't talk about it. The Archdiocese of Boston has an official spokesman who was paid about $200,000 a year, and he didn't talk about it. None of the Catholic press or television stations talked about it. So this really is it's very depressing. I think, very scandalizing to Catholics and very demoralizing to people in the pro-life movement that the church is silent on this. But I don't think, again, as I said, it's not particularly surprising. The church is compromised by the money they take from state government. Again, you mentioned what I wrote about Maura Healey giving Catholic Charities in Boston $1 million, and then they came up with a $10.5 million program for migrant resettlement, which was distributed among 8 different groups, one of which was the Catholic Charitable Bureau to the Archdiocese of Boston, and the other was Catholic Charities of Springfield. So that's about $3.6 million between the $1 million grant and another $2.6 million divided between Boston and Springfield. That's $3.6 million. Since I wrote that, I discovered that Catholic Charities has gotten another $500,000 from the state. So it's now well above $4 million. And I also discovered that we just assumed, because we've seen it in so many places, that Catholic Charities was kind of the cash cow, the big ticket recipient of government money. Many people have raised this issue about why the church is so supportive of kind of open borders. But what we've discovered is Catholic Charities is actually, this is small potatoes. What has really been the church entity that's been receiving really large numbers of money is the Archdiocese of Boston Planning and Housing Office, which got something like $90 million from the state, and then another $30 million from the state, and then another $30 million from the federal government to build low-income housing. So it looks as though the Catholic Church in Massachusetts, we're in the process of kind of researching this over the last 4 or 5 years, has probably been the recipient of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax money. So we wonder why Governor Maura Healey is brought to speak at the Catholic Schools Foundation Spring Gala, and where she's photographed and videotaped hugging Cardinal O'Malley. And we wonder why she's brought to the spring celebration of Catholic Charities. And we wonder why, former Governor Baker is brought to the annual fundraiser for the La Brea Center. And we wonder why Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is brought to the Spanish Catholic Charities branch, El Centro Cardenal, and honored there. They have a vested financial interest. Again, this is really very, very seriously compromising the church and compromising its pro-life witness. There's a 2004 statement from the U.S. Catholic Conference, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, called called Catholics in Political Life, which said Catholic institutions should not provide, quote unquote, awards, honors, or platforms to public figures who repudiate fundamental Catholic moral principles. Yet, the Church in Massachusetts has been one of the most egregious offenders of this. Cardinal O'Malley when he was the chairman of the Pro-Life Activities Committee of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, he gave an award to a pro-abortion politician, Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, who was given a humanitarian award by the Missionary Society of St. James the Apostle, whose president is the Cardinal. Catholic Charities in Boston has given 2 awards, not 1, 2 awards to the late Mayor Thomas Menino, who was both pro-abortion and was in favor of same-sex marriage. Now, former Boston Mayor and former Ambassador Ray Flynn, who was pro-life, has never received a single award from the Archdiocese. The late Boston Mayor John Collins, who spent most of his post-mayoral career on television advocating for the right to life, he never received an award. We have, if you look at Catholic institutions, we have 2 people in Massachusetts that won landmark Supreme Court decisions on religious freedom. One is the late John J. Hurley, who was head of the St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee, the South Boston Allied War Veterans Council, and the other is Eleanor McCullen, who's still with us, thankfully, from Operation Rescue, and she won the court case McCullen versus Moakley, which abolished buffer zones, and Hurley won the court case of Hurley versus Glib, which prevented homosexual groups from invading St. Patrick's Day parades. They've never gotten a single award from the Catholic Church ever. Pro-life politicians are never. Bill Bulger, the former Massachusetts Senate president, never received a single award from the Catholic Church. But John Kerry has received awards from Boston College. Former U.S. Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey has received awards from both Boston College and from Boston College Law School. It's one long, endless line of pro-abortion public figures that receive awards from Catholic colleges and universities and Catholic charities and elite Catholic secondary schools. We protested, along with other pro-life groups, an award that was given to former Boston Mayor and former U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh by my alma mater, Catholic Memorial High School, which is run by the Christian Brothers. So we have we wonder why these schools and why these Catholic institutions honor pro-abortion politicians. I think we're finding out why. Not only, it isn't just a matter that they agree with their dissident theology, but they're actually being funded by them.
CJ Doyle is with us, and nobody stays on top of this and reports on it better than you do, CJ. We greatly appreciate that. And one of the important reasons of why that is so necessary is because all the good folks out there that are seeing this, and they're kind of looking around saying, does anybody else notice this is wrong? This is scandalous. This is clear corruption. And am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. This needs to be said so that you understand, no, you're seeing it rightly. This is a major problem that is not being rectified. And look, when you're hugging close to pro-abortion politicians, giving them awards and all of this, and then you're never ever publicly rebuking them, never publicly calling them on in authentic love to stop murdering innocent children. Let's stop killing innocent children. When you're never saying that, when you're never calling them to repentance for what they've done and then to stop it immediately, it just doesn't make any sense. Unless you follow the money. I think that is certainly a very valid thing to take a look at, and those are clear facts. There is money flowing here, and the question to ask: how does that influence the silence? How does that influence it? And I guess they could say, well, that doesn't influence it. Well, then what does? What is influencing you from standing up and taking a strong stand when you have laws being enacted that are murdering innocent children on your watch, and it's getting worse and worse and worse? When are you going to take a stand? You've got people that would follow you on this, that would stand up with you, and you could make a real impact here. And you're refusing to do it. What is the excuse? What is the argument on that end? It'd be great to hear some questions being answered, I guess, from the archdiocesan leadership, from the Catholic conference there in Massachusetts. Of course, we don't get answers, and it's very difficult to even be able to meet with anybody. They don't take meetings and things like that. So it's a very a very sad state that we're in. But thanks be to God, we've got CJ Doyle with us today, laying it out so you can understand the lay of the land and keep doing the good work that you're called to do in spite of the scandal, in spite of the corruption. Don't let it dissuade you. Don't let it dishearten you. It is difficult when you face it, but we got to face it, see it for what it is, and say, all right, come Lord Jesus. That's no excuse for me to stop doing the good work that I'm called to do. And maybe by God's grace, in that witness, we can shine a light even to those in far bigger roles than us. Maybe it makes a difference in their hearts. We'll see. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And CJ, it's not just legislators in Massachusetts who are exporting and imposing their immoral belief in killing innocent children. It's also the Massachusetts judiciary. You've got an article up there on the site about defunding of Planned Parenthood, now blocked until trial. We've been covering this story some here, but you're on the ground there in Massachusetts. What's going on there with the Obama-appointed U.S. District Court Judge Indira Talwani of the District of Massachusetts in Boston?
Well, as you know, one of the provisions of President Trump's reconciliation bill, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, was the defunding of organizations that performed abortion. Now, by the way, this didn't mean the actual defunding of abortion itself, because many of these are done through state agencies. But it would any entity like a Planned Parenthood affiliated who performed abortion would be cut off from other federal Medicaid funds that didn't necessarily relate to abortion, but it was a blanket prohibition against any federal funds going to entities that performed abortion. Obviously, the Hyde Amendment had already prohibited the direct federal funding of abortion. This took it one step forward, so that you not only defunded abortion itself, but you defunded any entity that performed abortion. So a federal judge in Massachusetts, a low-level district judge. We have the Supreme Court, we have the various court of appeals around the country, and then we have federal district courts. A judge from the federal district court of the District of Massachusetts named Indira Talwani ended up did three things. First, she put out a temporary a preliminary injunction. Then she a temporary restraining order, rather, then came up with a preliminary injunction partially impeding the law, then came up with a second preliminary injunction completely vacating the law until trial. Now, Indira Talwani is an appointee of U.S. President Barack Obama, and she was nominated by one of the most left-wing and vehemently pro-abortion figures in the United States Senate, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Remember, Elizabeth Warren has called for the Federal Trade Commission to investigate pro-life crisis pregnancy centers, and she was part of this great wave of attacks that NARAL and Planned Parenthood made a couple of years ago on pregnancy centers. And she actually said that the pro-life women in pregnancy centers mean harm to women with troubled pregnancies. So she's an abortion fanatic. And incredibly, all the Republicans in the U.S. Senate voted to confirm Talwani, despite the person who was nominating her, and despite the fact that Indira Talwani had a whole record of left-wing activism prior to becoming a judge. She was an organizer earlier in her career for CU, that's the Service Employees International Union, which is one of the most radical unions in the United States. And she was a canvasser briefly for Fair Share, which is an ultra left-wing progressivist Massachusetts consumer group. So here's a woman who had a long record of left-wing connections and activity, and I think she was confirmed by 76 votes to a handful. Anyway, so again, lack of due diligence by the Republicans under Mitch McConnell. See, her initial temporary restraining order said that didn't go into any details, just said the plaintiffs, in this case, the plaintiffs being three Planned Parenthood entities, the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, the Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts, and the Planned Parenthood Association of Utah. And on July 7th, 2025, she issued this temporary restraining order saying they had shown good cause, and then went for a hearing on July 21st, 2 weeks later. And then on July 21st, she issued an initial preliminary injunction, partially pausing this law to defund entities that performed abortion. And then about a week later, she expanded her preliminary injunction to completely shut down the enforcement of this law. Now, it's important to bear in mind here that the original ban, if you recall, was for a 10-year ban on funding of Planned Parenthood, and that was reduced from 10 years to 1 year by the Senate parliamentarian. Now, a 1-year ban means that this trial, this issue, this court case, will still be litigated when the law expires in July of in the end of June of 2026, which of course is the middle of a congressional midterm election season, which means the Republicans then will have to pass this all over again, and some may be a bit more reluctant to do so given electoral pressure. So this is clearly a very cynical thing to do. Her decision means the law cannot be enforced until it goes to trial, and it won't go to trial for months or maybe a year. So essentially, this judge is nullifying an act of Congress signed into law by the President of the United States. Now, Article 1, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution states that all legislative power shall be vested in the Congress. It does not provide for any kind of judicial nullification of congressional legislative action. The money bills originate in the House. The Senate can confirm or reject them. The president can sign them or veto them. There's no role for the judiciary here. So this is, again, a very brazen and clear usurpation by a partisan activist masquerading as a jurist to essentially usurp the right of the people and their elected representatives to govern. Again, the great Catholic historian Hilary Belloc said that democracy did not consist of the forms of democracy. It consisted of the actual implementation of the will of the people. And the will of the people here has been frustrated by a single federal judge, low-ranking federal judge.
Yes, yeah, and on appeal, this goes to the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which is not likely to reverse or stay the injunction. 6 of 6 active judges were appointed by Democrats, either Obama or Biden, on that Court of Appeals. So that's not looking good. Another move would be for the Trump administration to file an emergency stay request with the Supreme Court. We'll see how much the Trump administration cares about this issue. We'll see if they do try to do an emergency stay with the Supreme Court. I haven't heard if there's been any reporting on that in the last few days, but something to look for. We'll see. But I do want to make sure that we get in here today. CJ, you wrote a phenomenal article on Independence Day, July 4th. Regarding the history of our nation. You wrote, you begin the article by saying American Catholics have a compelling reason to regard with affection and gratitude America's founding. It's just a phenomenal article to help people to understand the history of colonial America and how anti-Catholic it really was. And then the important history of the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence and everything that took place that turned this country around from its anti-Catholic ways. What jumps out to you? What would you like to share with us on this today?
Well, the great political philosopher and member of the British Parliament, who was Anglo-Irish, by the way, who was actually Irish, not Anglo-Irish, from Ireland, who was an Irish Anglican, Edmund Burke, who we hope and think came into the faith on his deathbed, once referred to the British penal laws, officially called the Laws for the Suppression of Popery, as a model of vicious perfection. The British anti-Catholic penal laws, which existed in the British Empire in the 17th and 18th centuries, were perhaps the most cruel and the most comprehensive and most systematic form of oppression prior to the rise of 20th century totalitarianism. It was not only intended to crush the Catholic faith in the British Empire and to deprive Catholics of their civil and political rights, but to destitute them, to dispossess them of their land, to destroy their family life. Catholics were not only prohibited from holding any civil or military office under the crown, and the practice of the Catholic religion was not only prohibited, but Catholics could not receive an education, either at home or abroad. Catholics could not serve as lawyers, or attorneys. They could not serve as jurors in a crown court. They could not serve as schoolmasters or teachers. If in the case of Catholic estates, if the son of a Catholic landowner apostatized and conformed to the king's religion by law established, he could expropriate his father's land. He could dispossess his father and reduce his father to a tenant on his own land. Primogeniture was repealed for Catholics. Primogeniture is the legal doctrine in English common law whereby the eldest son inherits the estate. In the case of Catholic Ireland, primogeniture was replaced by something called gavelkind, which meant that the estate was broken up between all the sons, which would reduce the size and in many cases make the land economically unviable. It was again a very thorough, comprehensive. Catholics could not serve as minors or Catholics could serve as guardians of minor children. The Catholic widow of a Protestant husband was exposed to the possibility of having her children taken away from her. So again, it wasn't just designed to prohibit the Catholic religion or to stop Catholics from holding political power. It was designed to completely destroy them, to destroy their family life, destroy their economic life. And this prevailed in the entire British Empire, in the 13 colonies, in Great Britain and Ireland, and the other parts of the empire. The only exception was after 1774 was Francophone Quebec, where under the Quebec Act, the Catholic religion was tolerated. But in the Anglosphere, in the English-speaking parts of the British Empire, again, including the 13 colonies, these laws prevailed. And the severe legislation by the Imperial Parliament was imitated and reinforced by colonial legislatures. The Massachusetts General Court prescribed a death penalty for Jesuits and for any Catholic priest that went into the colony. In Maryland, which, as you know, was founded by Catholics as a refuge for Catholics, Catholicism was suppressed, and Catholics were forced to worship in private chapels on estates on the basis of legal sufferance. That is to say, the discretionary non-enforcement of anti-Catholic laws on the statute books. The only colony that allowed freedom of religion for Catholics was the proprietary province of Pennsylvania under William Penn, under the Quakers. That permitted, the actual existence of Catholic churches. And even in the case, I think it's St. Mary's in Philadelphia, the back of the church fronted the street, and the front of the church fronted the churchyard in the back, so that it would not exacerbate or excite Protestant hostility. This all began to change with the American War of Independence. It started actually in November of 1775 when President George Washington. It was entirely unique. It seemed to be entirely devoid of this attitude of contempt towards Catholics. Issued his famous general orders, which prohibited the celebration of Guy Fawkes Day, known in New England as Pope Night, where the Pope was burned in effigy. And then later, of course, the 13 colonies sought aid from Catholic France, the eldest daughter of the church, and in 1778 the United States signed its first foreign treaty, a treaty of alliance with the Kingdom of France, and France came into the war on America's behalf. And then another great Catholic power, Spain, came into the war. By the way, we think of Cuba as a really kind of a insignificant third world country. The Spanish colony of Cuba played a very important part in American independence because they had a great arsenal in Havana that helped produce arms and other things for the Continental Army. So Spain and France came to the aid of the United States. With the passage of the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom in the 1780s, we saw at least 4 states, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, and Rhode Island, where Catholics enjoyed complete legal equality and full citizenship rights with Protestants. The Catholic worship was allowed in all 13 colonies by the end of the War of Independence. And then, of course, came the Great Constitutional Convention of 1787, where in Article 6, the U.S. Constitution prohibited a religious test for public office. This was the American equivalent of Constantine's Edict of Milan, which granted full religious freedom to Catholics. We should really be very, very grateful. It was 1829, by the way, before Great Britain and Ireland had Catholic emancipation, and there were still many conditions on that. So America really led the way in providing full freedom of religion to Catholics.
Very interesting, and yeah, you can really. It helps to helps in the perspective. Almost look at it like colonial America was really an extension. It was the British Empire, as you say. Those were the British colonies, and then they're very anti-Catholic, and then the founding of the new nation. As the new nation emerges, all of that anti-Catholicism begins to be pushed away, at least legally. It would take some time for that to all work through, but we're going to have some more when we get back. Stay tuned. make sure that you know about All Saints Day, Saturday, November 1st. We're inviting you to come and join the National Men's March to Abolish Abortion and Rally for Personhood in Boston, where our nation's fight for freedom was born. Just as our founders rose up against tyranny, we must now rise against the evil of abortion, the violent destruction of our nation's most vulnerable children. It's time for a peaceful counter-revolution rooted in truth, authentic love, and our U.S. Constitution calling for the equal protection of every preborn child under the 14th Amendment. Men, it's time to lead. We invite you to join us. Women, children, families, come stand with us at the Rally for Personhood. 11 a.m., we call for the men to come gather outside of the Planned Parenthood Killing Center on Commonwealth Ave. At 11:30, we'll step off and the march will begin. At 12:45 p.m., the rally will begin at Parkman Bandstand on the Boston Common, and everything will wrap up around 2 p.m. Dress sharp if you can. Men wear suits, priests, and clerics. You can learn more at themensmarch.com, themensmarch.com. But mark your calendar now. If you're in and around the Boston area, there's no excuse not to be there at this. We need you. Let's step up together here. And if you're in any other area, if it takes a bit of a drive or maybe even a flight, whatever you can do, we greatly appreciate you joining it together on this and standing as one, really shining that light in the darkness there on All Saints Day. It's going to be a powerful opportunity. Certainly hope you can join us. All right, CJ, final segment here. Anything you want to share with us, go for it.
Well, I just point out that one of the topics we talked about earlier, which was the kind of financial corruption and the compromises that the Catholic Church entities make when they take money from the government. It's a lot deeper than that. It's just not a matter of grants from state agencies or federal agencies to Catholic charities or to Catholic housing units. Lobbyists, businessmen, contractors, attorneys, consultants, they like to be seen and they like opportunities to talk to governors and to mayors. So when you have a pro-abortion governor or pro-abortion mayor showing up at a Catholic fundraising dinner, which happens all the time here in Boston, that attracts quite a lot of people that you wouldn't get if they weren't going to be there. It's difficult to quantify this, but the presence of pro-abortion, these prominent pro-abortion politicians at Catholic functions, greatly increases the fundraising take of these entities, whether it's Catholic charities or the Catholic Schools Foundation or the Campaign for Catholic Schools or the Labouré Center or these various other groups. Another thing you have to bear in mind is we've had tremendous attrition in terms of losses of Catholics in this country. Perhaps according to Pew, about 2/5 of all cradle Catholics have left the faith in the last 20 years. So we have excess property and excess churches. And one of the ways the Catholic Church stays solvent is by liquidating its real estate assets. And these require the approval of, in many cases, of municipal government, of city government, as in the case in Boston, where a cathedral parking lot was turned into a multi-million-dollar, maybe $100 million real estate development for both apartments and condos and everything else. And this requires the approval of the city of Boston. They used to have a group called an infamous group called the BRA, the Boston Reconstruction Authority, which is Boston Redevelopment Authority, which is now something called the Boston Planning and Development Agency. But that has to approve it. So again, there's another financial motive there, isn't there, for staying on the good side of pro-abortion mayors like Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, again, who was endorsed by Planned Parenthood and who welcomed the endorsement of Planned Parenthood, because Mayor Wu has to approve the real estate deals that keep the archdiocese running in the black. So that and plus you also have to consider the fact that when you're seen with a pro-abortion governor, a pro-abortion mayor, a pro-abortion politician, that doesn't hurt you with the liberal media, does it? It tends to cause them to be less aggressive in pursuing you and in attacking you. And in some cases, there's a direct quid pro quo. Some victims group wanted to investigate the Catholic Church about 7 years ago here, and Maura Healey, who was now our governor, was then the Attorney General, abortion fanatic, but again, somebody with a close relationship with the Archdiocese, she turned down the request for investigation. So again, you see another case of the Church's relationship with these pro-abortion political figures working to its advantage. I think that the corruption is It's systemic, it's institutional, it's long-standing, and it's quite pervasive. And again, it's very, very demoralizing to anybody in the pro-life movement to witness this. It's really a culture of betrayal.
Yeah, and what would you say, CJ, so say the archdiocesan spokesman comes to you and said, well, you just laid out my case. Those are all the reasons why we don't speak out, why we do what we do. It's prudence. We look at all that we're gaining, and we wouldn't gain anything if we spoke out anyway. So this is what we're doing. I mean, they would really be making an argument of the ends justifying the means. I think we would retort back, you can't do evil to try to bring about a good. But anyway, what's your response to it, CJ? How would you respond to maybe a spokesman saying something like that?
How much blood are we prepared to accept for financial benefit? We've had 66 million abortions in this country since 1973. Massachusetts has had well over 1 million abortions. Okay, you can argue that given the current composition of the legislature and the Supreme Judicial Court, there isn't much that can reverse that right now. But we ought to be educating and speaking the truth and mobilizing faithful Catholics, and they don't even do that. This is just appalling. I mean, this is the argument, by the way, that argument that you laid out, saying they can make. That was the argument that Vichy France made, that the collaborators made in World War II. It would be worse off if the Nazis directly occupied France. By working with them, we can mitigate the damage. And of course, they ended up being hanged or shot as traitors in 1945. This is a classic a collaborationist quizzling argument. And Catholic bishops and Catholic cardinals and Catholic prelates and Catholic priests ought to reject that, and we shouldn't have to explain to them why they ought to reject that.
Well, we'd love for the Archdiocese to join us at the Men's March All Saints Day. It'd be a great time to get on the right side of this, to all stand up as one and together, and to call on all of the elected officials in Massachusetts and beyond, and to begin to speak out in real, authentic love, in fortitude, to tell the truth, and to really love our neighbor, right? To really love God and love neighbor. It seems so clear to me. I don't know how an archbishop, a bishop could be on the wrong side of this, how they wouldn't have that burning in their heart, in their soul, to want to speak out on this at this time. It's hard for me to really understand it, but what we can do is we can pray, we can keep doing the work that we're called to, keep giving opportunities. Anything else, CJ Doyle, that you would recommend to us?
No, just again, we have to discharge our own consciences. And we can't be responsible for the actions of others, including our religious leaders. But if we pray and we work hard and we do our duty, that's what will please God. All
right, we're down to final minute here. CJ, always a blessing to have you with us again. Folks can find you and your good work. Check out all the articles over there at CatholicActionLeague.org. Any final word for us today, CJ?
I just want to commend you, Jim. This is a wonderful program. It's a great alternative to the not only to the secular media, but to much of the official diocesan Catholic media. So I just encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing, and I commend you and thank you for this wonderful possibility.
You as well, CJ. Thank you very much. And again, I want to invite everybody, save the date. Come join us on All Saints Day, Saturday, November 1st in Boston, Massachusetts. CJ was one of the speakers last year. We'd love to have him speak again. Hopefully you'll meet him there if you come, along with many others. We've got a great lineup already taking shape. We'll share it more with you as we get closer. God bless you all.